أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والنازعات غرقا والناشطات نشطا والسابحات سبحا فالسابقات سبقا فالمدبرات أمرا يوم ترجف الراجفة تتبعها الرادفة قلوب يومئذ واجفة أبصارها خاشعة يقولون إنا لمردودون في الحافرة أإذا كنا عظاما نخرة قالوا تلك إذا كرة خاسرة فإنما هي زجرة واحدة فإذا هم بالساهرة هل أتاك حديث موسى إذ ناداه ربه بالغد طوى اذهب إلى فرعون إنه طغى فقل هل لك إلى أن تزكى وأهديك إلى ربك فتخشى فأراه الآيات الكبرى فكذب وعصى ثم أدبر يسعى فحشر فنادى فقال أنا ربكم الأعلى فأخذه الله نكال الآخرة والأولى إن في ذلك لعبرة لمن يخشى أأنت أشد خلقا أم السماء بناها رفع سمكها فسواها وأغطش ليلها وأخرج ضحاها والأرض بعد ذلك دحاها أخرج منها ماءها ومرعاها والجبال أرساها متاعا لكم ولأنعامكم فإذا جاءت الطامة الكبرى يوم يتذكر الإنسان ما سعى وبرزت الجحيم لمن يرى فأما من طغى وآثر الحياة الدنيا فإن الجحيم هي المأوى وأما من خاف مقام ربه ونهى النفس عن الهوى فإن الجنة هي المأوى يسألونك عن الساعة أيان مرساها فيما أنت من ذكراها إلى ربك منتهاها إنما أنت منذر إنما أنت منذر من يخشاها كأنهم يوم يرونها لم يلبثوا إلا عشية أو ضحاها. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for joining us once again. My name is Ali Basit, and with me is the world's #1 co host,
My name is Huda Gharib.
Aliya Gharib, and you're watching Physical and Virtual Environments, a look into the world of geographers, urban planners, and landscape designers. This panel is the 8th and last in a series of panel sessions hosted by the Thaqalain Muslim Association at the University of Toronto Scarborough, the University of Toronto St. George, and Queen's University.
Before we get started, we wanted to acknowledge that while this event is virtual, we recognize that our universities are situated on the lands of Indigenous nations, specifically the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations. These territories are included in the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between Indigenous peoples of this land to care for the land and water and take from it only what one needs, while leaving enough for others. From a Muslim perspective, this doesn't sound too different from the role assigned to us by God to be guardians of the earth and to not be wasteful. And we hope that everyone can join us in being mindful of the land and water that we all share, inshallah. So without further ado, let's get started. We are so excited to welcome our 3 honored guests today who are engaged in such important and fascinating work in the fields of geography, urban planning, and landscape design. So a warm welcome to Aliya Karmali, Raza Jafri, and Zainab Gharib for being with us today. So to start off, to get to know you a little bit more, these are the biographies. So starting with Aliya, she is an emerging curator, a new media artist, and landscape designer. She works with a diverse set of media, including video, light, and sound. In addition to a bachelor's in architectural and visual studies from the University of Toronto, she is near to receive her master's of landscape architecture from the same institution this month, God willing. Congratulations. Aliya is interested in the relationship between technology, space, and the human spirit as she works towards completing her thesis on Wadi Salam in Najaf, Iraq. Zainab is a first-year master's student in the Department of Geography and Planning at Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario. She has a bachelor's degree in physical geography and a certificate in geographic information science, or GIS, from Queen's University. Her undergraduate research focused on facilitating rock art conservation using geographic information systems at the UNESCO World Heritage Site in Jordan. Her current master's research makes use of tools such as MATLAB and GIS to uncover ways in which we can better leverage the invaluable environmental information captured by the historic Corona satellite program. She's doing this in the hopes of extending climate change analyses several decades back and achieving more precise landscape feature detection and extraction. She's also involved in various forms of teaching, such as through teacher assistantship and mentoring initiatives. And last, but of course not least, we have Raza Jafri, who is a Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of 3D Cityscapes, Inc., a global leader in interactive digital environments. Raza was born and raised in Montreal, Quebec, where his desire for creative design and developing green cities of the future led him to pursue his studies in a career focused on urban planning, sustainable architecture, and high-tech innovation. He completed his graduate studies at Queen's University, where he obtained an executive MBA, or Master's in Business Administration, from the Smith School of Business in Kingston, Ontario. He holds a bachelor's degree in urban planning and sustainable development from Concordia University in Montreal, Quebec. He also holds a license with the Real Estate Council of Ontario and is an active member with the Toronto Real Estate Board. Raza is fluent in 5 languages, mashallah, and has a passion for traveling, architectural design, and additionally volunteers for multiple education-focused children's charities such as Help for Hope.ca, which is an orphans charity, and he has served as a mentor for the Urban Land Institute, is a mentor at MAX, Aspire Muslim Professionals, and serves on the Jafri Facilities and Management Board, and as a treasurer of the Jafri Capital Projects Board at 9000 Bathurst Jafri Community Centre in Vaughan, Ontario. Thank you so much for being with us, such an accomplished group, and I can't wait to hear what to hear more about your experiences, inshallah. But I'll pass it on to Brother Ali Basit to get us started.
Yeah, thank you for the lovely introduction of our panelist, Huda. I was just in the other room with Brother Raza, and he was giving me a pep talk. He was inspiring me to continue these these sessions. Start off with Brother Raza to see some of these inspirations as to for his inspirations. Brother Raza, as we mentioned, you've completed your undergraduate in urban planning and sustainable development, and then received an executive MBA from Queen Smith School of Business. You put these two fields of urban planning and business together and then co-founded 3D Cityscapes. What was the inspiration behind entering into the field of urban planning and then coupling that with an MBA?
Absolutely. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for having us today. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. To answer your question in the briefest possible way is none of this was actually planned. I had an affinity towards sustainable design and architecture. And growing up, I played a lot of SimCity. I knew that the infrastructure in Montreal was crumbling and there was a big problem. As I got older, I realized I want to do something about that problem, because I remember reading somewhere that, you know, the greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. And it really hit me. So I decided to study urban planning. When I graduated, there was not a lot of work in that field. It was 2008, 2009. So I started getting more into the infrastructure and design fields, and realized if I cap it off with an executive MBA, it will allow me to, you know, create something that can influence the design and planning community, which was in need for, you know, an overhaul actually. So that's what kind of my trajectory was to get me to this place.
Right. Did you say Montreal was crumbling?
Yeah, Montreal's infrastructure. You know, I don't want to poke fun at my old hometown, but we all know that the roads are very, very well designed in Montreal.
Right. I was just gonna say, whenever you're available, come down to Toronto. We can use some of that.
I'm here, man. I live in Toronto now. I'm at our office. Our office is in North York, and trust me, every time I hit a pothole here in Toronto, I'm like,
exactly.
oh,
that's what I was thinking.
It could be worse. It could be worse. Trust me.
All right. Thank you, Brother Raza. Zainab, you attended Queen's University as well, but you've studied physical geography at the undergrad and master's level. Did you always know that geography was the path for you?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and salam, viewers. Thank you for having me to introduce geography, perhaps to a lot of our viewers. I did not know that I wanted to enter geography. I've only known about and been in geography for almost 5 years. And I'll tell you how it came about to be. So when I finished high school, I had lots of interests and lots of strengths. And I didn't have a particular career or field of choice. I knew I wanted to be in science, but I liked all the sciences. I liked math, I liked technology. So I decided to do general sciences in my first undergraduate year just to explore my choices. And so I took classes in bio and chemistry and computer science, astronomy, and a whole variety of subjects. And the way geography came in the picture was in the summertime, I was looking for one more course to take. And my sister was helping me out because I was, I guess, desperate at that point. And she found geography. She told me to read the course description, and I read it, and it sounded really appealing to me. And I was very excited to take the course. So towards the end of my first year, I took the course, and I decided to pursue my bachelor's degree in it. And so why I decided to take geography is more than just interest. It combined, yes, all my interests and my strengths from science to math to technology. And it's very interdisciplinary. So it involves and combines and integrates so many disciplines and different expertise. And it deals with real world problems. So you're always solving problems and learning something new. And geography was just the right thing for me. It's so wide scoped, it's so diverse. Courses study our world from the cell or the subcellular processes such as photosynthesis to the entire globe in the context of climate change, for example. And the courses I took in my undergrad looked at animals, mountains, rivers, oceans, forests, astronomy, basic physics, satellites, cartography, but also geopolitics and justice and cities and human migration. And till this date in my master's, I'm still learning, and I choose to still learn about these things, going from the cellular level to the real world problems of using geographical data, to how global protests are currently changing our societies, and how we use satellites to image the world from space. And geography is, an ever-changing and adapting and pertinent field that never gets boring because it's so timely and so useful in our societies.
All right, thank you. I think you said you've only been doing it for 5 years. When bachelors think of jobs, they think and they get the job description. It says at least 5 years of experience. So you're gonna go in there saying, at least I only have 5 years of experience.
I know.
Aliya, you're on the cusp or about to finish off your master's in landscape architecture from the University of Toronto. Congratulations once again from me. Can you talk to us about how about your journey and why you decided to do a bachelor's in architectural and visual studios studies, and then later on a master's in landscape architecture?
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thanks, guys, for creating such a safe space for us to talk about these situations and topics in our city. And I'm not going to tell you a real story how I got into it because it's embarrassing. So I'm going to fast forward and get to the part where I was just exiting high school. So I got accepted into engineering and art school, but I always knew I wanted to be in architecture. So it was the last day to submit applications to post-secondary, and I opened up the U of T book. I went eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and up on one of them, and I'm like, hey, I have all of the requirements for this, and I went into city studies at UTSC. And I loved city studies so much that I realized that I was interested in architecture, but more at the regional scale. And so I did architecture and art, but I was like Brother Raza and Sister Zainab, I had no idea where I was going. It just kind of happened into my life. I hated landscape architecture with a passion. I had a prof that ruined it for me, completely ruined it for me. And I swore myself I would never go into landscape architecture. But I started talking to one of my mentors who was a landscape architecture or an urban designer. And she's like, you need to go into landscape. You're not in architecture. And I'm like, no, I swear to God, I'm not going to do it. And I ended up going into it. And that same prof that I hated so much became the most beloved prof to me now. I love him so much. I swear to God, things just happen for a reason, right? Your interests and your values, they really guide you through all these things. And I'm starting to see that all of the interests that I had, because it wasn't just a specific interest, it was an interest in biology, science, physics, space, building, art, all these things all fell into landscape architecture and urban design. And it just was the most natural course for me to follow.
So let me get this straight. You discovered this accidentally, and then this was a discovered passion. And then you hated it with passion. And then you hated the prof. But then you ended up loving the prof. And then now
I was fighting my destiny.
Okay. So, that makes sense. It adds up. Now, I hated math, and then I finished with math, and I never liked math. So, that's a different story. Let's go back to Sister Huda Gharib to cover what the job involves for these different careers.
Thank you so much. Let's start with Zainab this time. Anyone who has talked to you about geography and your studies and can see how passionate you are about it. And I think we've seen that just from the first segment that we had, how much you love it. But thinking back to when I was in high school geography class, I feel like justice wasn't really done to the subject. And I couldn't really see, the purpose of it really very clearly. But as I've become more familiar with geography, especially with conversations with you, I've gained so much more appreciation for it. and that's beyond just realizing the importance of geography in the current historical moment that we live. Climate change is such a central issue, and we see a lot of young people taking up causes like sustainability and environmental justice. But you kind of briefly told us about geography a little bit earlier, but do you mind sort of expanding on that and then talking a little bit about what your work entails and how it sort of falls into geography?
Yes, absolutely. I do want to start by giving a definition of geography because it's true when I tell people I'm in geography or physical geography, they say, cool, that sounds interesting. What's it about? And, I get people get the impression from high school that even if they even still remember anything from their geography class, that, it's about countries and their capital city and the flag and the total area. But that's really only a very small fraction of geography, specifically the subfield of geopolitics. And that's more on the human geography side of things. And these are human-made boundaries. So geography is the study of the processes and patterns which are observed on our planet. So it's the study of location and anything with a location component attached to it. And it also isn't just environmental stuff. That's environmental science. Physical geography, which is what I specialize in, is like a combination of both. It does deal with natural phenomena, but I must say that we make a distinction here because physical geography and human geography are very interconnected and related to one another for sure. So geography is ingrained in our everyday lives. Like Google Maps, for example, is the work of a geographer. And geography has immense connection and utility and importance in our societies. Many problems that we face in many world conflicts are geographical problems, and it's always been like that. And I'm sure you can think of some applications yourself right now. Climate change is largely considered a geographical problem. Now, in terms of health, epidemiology seeks to study the spread and patterns of COVID-19. That's a geographical problem. And again, attests to the interdisciplinary and integrative nature of geography. And it helps us see the racial segregation in the very cities we live in and understand, the extent of injustice within these spaces. This is in human geography. And geography is critical in military applications as well. It's a very big driver. Urban planning is a bit separate, but it's involved with, planning our spaces to be suitable for the humans living in it. These are very pertinent questions within modern society. In studying cities, we can ask questions of inequality and how to render our city sustainable and achieve better quality of life that way. So it helps us understand and address the problems we have today, let alone those of the past, such as colonization, for example. And career paths are so diverse, and usually a geographer has not had a linear career path. Some people come from various backgrounds and end up in geography and doing research in geography. It's really got something for everyone. And even like the skills that are obtained in geography are highly sought after skills in every field. And careers in geography span many different types of fields, applications, sectors, community needs, and geographers often work with other people doing different things across their community. An important tool is GIS. So I guess the field is called Geographic Information Science. And then the specific tools we use are geographic information systems. So those are computer programs that deal with geographical data. So we can make maps through them. We can do different analyses across space. And maybe some of the other respected panelists will touch on that. But as for my research, so my focus is on remote sensing, which is the subfield that's involved with our acquisition of images of our planet from satellites in space. So specifically, I study images obtained from some of the first satellites in space called Corona. And our aim is to find out how we can better use these images because they're quite hard to work with. These were captured on film, and many people just haven't found the right way and an easy way to work with them. But these are so important because they are such old images. They go back to 1960. And that's when climate change began to be really important and when carbon dioxide emissions began to skyrocket. And so it's really important for many types of studies and applications that I won't go into now, but particularly for climate change to be able to go back in time and as far as possible and study how our planet has changed since then. So I can show you some images now. So, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great. Can you see the share screen at the bottom?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so I'll share. All right, so can you see my whole screen?
Yes.
Okay, great big world map. So corona imagery, corona imagery is older than maybe many of our parents, and this is, it's making us able to go back so far in time, like even before the internet. So these images you'll see were taken in film, and we didn't have access to them until the film bucket was dropped back on Earth to land in the ocean and be captured and taken in for analysis. And this satellite was launched by the US for spying on its adversaries, also known as reconnaissance. And they were later declassified for use by the public. And so we're doing something good, I guess, with something that was used for reconnaissance and Cold War purposes. But this is a corona satellite atlas. It's called the CAST atlas, and it's public, so you can go see these yourself. So I'm going to take you through something that I did when I was exploring my data here. So something I discovered, and I decided to go see Karbala. So I decided to go see what Karbala was like decades ago. So I'll zoom in here to Karbala. Okay, so this is Karbala, and I will take you to Bayn al-Haramain. Okay, so zooming in here. So this is recent satellite imagery. So this is Bayn al-Haramain, very familiar. We know it, we love it. And then, so what I decided to do is I'm going to activate the corona imagery here. Okay, so this imagery is from 1967, 1968. There was no Bayn al-Haramain then. So, and you can see here, there's no walkway in between the Haramain, and the maqams have gotten larger, and you can see the proliferation of the city on the outskirts here, right? So it's all built now. And so these are some of the things that I get to see. And then close to here, I also noticed something else. So I'll take you to this feature over here. This is a very big lake here. And if I turn off, this is the corona imagery. If I turn this off, you can see how the lake's dried up. A lot of it has dried up. So these are some of the things that we can see, how much the planet has changed over, 6 decades. Entire lakes just disappearing. So that's an example. Couple other things. So you might have seen things like this before, but this is Planet Labs, who has taken, it takes images, at least one image of the entire landmass of the Earth in one day. And they send out satellites to space that are about the size of a loaf of bread. So that's kind of where the technology has brought us to. But you may have seen some pictures like these, or pictures of, for example, before and after the Amazon rainforest fires. So this is Beirut. If you remember the terrible Beirut port blast last summer, this is before the blast. And if I slide this over, we can see satellite images of Beirut after the blast. So if you focus on the center of the image here, this is where the blast occurred. You can see the incredible damage. And then if you look down here as well, the damage that was done to the city. And then one last thing that I'm gonna quickly show you is something called racial inequality as seen from the sky. So this is a photographer that takes images using his drone of cities, and he shows us just the crazy racial segregation that exists in some areas of the world. And he says, discrepancies in how people live are sometimes hard to see from the ground. The beauty of being able to fly is to see things from a new perspective, to see things how they really are. So you can see the poorer neighborhoods, how they're more dense, and then the richer neighborhoods have bigger houses and more greenery. So these are some of the things that geographical tools allow us to see. and use in order to solve different problems. And that's all I have to show.
That was so fantastic. Thank you so much for showing us that. Thinking back to what you said earlier about the interdisciplinary nature of geography, I think what you just showed us right now are these different applications you can have just from GIS and from, these tools that you have. You have social justice, you have environment, you have, people studies. So it kind of shows me that, if you're interested in something that, like social justice, for example, it doesn't just have to be in history, sociology. You can do it in geography as well. And so opening up that scope for people to see the different fields and not have this like sort of homogenous thinking about what each field contains. So thank you for showing that and for highlighting the use of that. So I'll move on to Aliya. Your interests also lie at the intersection of a lot of different things that people may not typically put together, such as technology, space, and the human spirit. And your master's work brings these elements together to me in such a fascinating way. So can you describe first what landscape architecture is and landscape design and how they differ from like traditional forms of architecture? And then tell us a little bit more about your master's project.
Sure. So Sister Zainab touched on so much of what my research is also about. It's funny because her work, because of her work and her field's work, I can do my work. So looking at the Corona Cemetery as Corona satellite imagery, I'm able to look at cemeteries in that part of the world and, water features, biodiversity, vegetation, how the land sort of was shaped by local environmental knowledge. So what she's touched on is basically the precursor to my work as well. So landscape architecture is really working with, we can just imagine that the earth itself is the canvas and that we have the ability to design it so that we can achieve certain goals. Architecture, now this is like a super very basic understanding of architecture. People think of it just as buildings. It's design, it's construction, but when you're in a team, and in the professional world, you're working with so many different people and there's so many overlaps. So it's hard to define things like strictly. So a landscape architect would work with a architect, would work with an urban planner, work with a geographer, political science as well as involved in there for sure. So I'll kind of touch on what I do and maybe that'll kind of define my field more abstractly that way. So I work with similar things to Sister Zainab. It's people, just the spatial qualities of people and where they place themselves, the way that vegetation is then impacted by different things like climate change or infrastructure, engineering, and also water features and how that affects cities, the forests. One of the other things that the city of Toronto is trying to do is bringing in more trees. So a landscape architect would be, is being tasked with finding out how best we can plant trees on the street, how we can start to design a city which really focuses on tree canopy, giving oxygen and preserving the trees for decades instead of maybe like 10 years or 5 years, and then the tree dies. So it can be small scale. A lot of people think like landscape design is like, the garden outside the house. It can be small scale, that's fine. But it can also be about stormwater retention, stormwater management, or metro links as well. How does transportation become embedded within the city? It's a wide range of things. So I will share my work now. Let's see. So let's, I think we're all familiar with like Wadi al-Salam, and I think our audience as well. So a lot of these maps are just really about, the history of Wadi al-Salam, the history of Najaf, the city of Najaf and Karbala, and just these are just really for the more the audience that isn't familiar with it. But just to go to this map, when we look at Wadi al-Salam, the boundaries that we see today on Google Maps they're just state boundaries. It's not what the people think. The people think in the local boundaries are just very different depending on who you ask. So before when we were talking about like historical history, Wadi al-Salam wasn't actually known until the 11th century. But we know from our ahadith that this land was, it's a part of heaven. It was kind of always there. It just wasn't recognized as a cemetery until Harun al-Rashid came in and designated the spot as a cemetery. But Najaf was actually like the backyard of the city of Kufa. It was all planted, trees. Nobody went in there. It was the wilderness. And then it was actually in the 11th century that they started to develop the city. And when the government at this time started to build dams throughout all of Iraq, it finally brought water to the city and more people could actually relocate. And so the cemetery started to expand. So we go from, where Imam Ali is buried to the old part of Wadi al-Salam. And then the Iraq-Iran war broke out. So in the 1980s, we see an expansion of the cemetery again. And this is the boundaries that we're familiar over here. But then COVID-19 happened, right? And so there was a cemetery that was designated just for those who have died from the disease. And so we see that this cemetery has been expanding towards the city of Karbala. And the locals actually believe that the land between Najaf and Karbala, all of this is part of Wadi al-Salam. So we're not talking about, the state boundaries. We're not talking about ahadith. We're talking about the people and local environmental knowledge. What do the people think Wadi al-Salam is? And it's this entire thing. So I decided in my thesis that yes, this entire thing is going to become a cemetery one day. If the locals have so much power to add to their city, they're going to fight for their city, they're going to fight for their space. If it's going to become a cemetery, then why don't we start designing this route, the Arba'in processional route from Najaf to Karbala? Let's start designing it so that we can start to accommodate these pilgrims and actually design it so that it is like heaven. So that's basically my design. That was like in a nutshell. I just want to show you this image that seems to have moved. But local environmental knowledge is a lot bigger than just space, right? It's also, I dated it back to the last glacial, basically the ice age. What happened in this entire Mesopotamian alluvium that made it so that Wadi al-Salam became so large and so important. Yes, Imam Ali is buried there, but that didn't happen to all the shrines, right? We don't see the same thing happening in other parts of, in other shrines around the Middle East. So what made it so important that this cemetery became the #1 cemetery in Iraq to bury a body? And there's such a great and rich history with medicinal plants, harvesting just vegetation and what it's used for. And so this route, when we design it, we have to think about what do the locals need on this route, and bringing back that medicine, bringing back plants that remediate the land, and bringing back sort of that beauty and that richness of the culture is what's going to make the locals inherit their knowledge and advocate for their knowledge and become authority or having control over their knowledge. So basically my thesis is if we heal the land, we can heal the people, because the land and the people are connected.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think what you said right at the end is exactly what I was thinking. Like you can't take people out of the space that they live in and that they grieve in, and that, you know, at the end of the day, we're all buried in. We're connected to that land. You know, we come from that soil, and we're eventually going to go back to it. So it's so important to consider the environment around us, not just in terms of climate change, but how does it affect our daily life and, you know, the life of the people who are grieving us at the end of the day. So such important work, and thank you so much for sharing that. Brother Raza, moving on to you, you've coupled, you know, your passion for urban planning and development with technology as well, to create virtual renditions of residential areas, cities, and other architectural spaces. Inshallah, we'll be able to take a look at that in a sec. But before we do that, can you describe, you know, from your perspective, what urban planning is and the importance of technology in that field? And then maybe we'll take a look at some of the work of 3D cityscapes, inshallah.
Absolutely. So essentially touching upon what Sister Zainab and Sister Aliya spoke about, urban planning is essentially, it's crucial. 7.6 billion people on this world, 4.2 billion of them live in urban areas. That population is increasing continuously, putting a strain on our cities. What is urban? Urban is towns, cities, and the suburbs. Everything that's rural is not considered urban. But the rural area is affected directly by the urban area, especially because as the urban population around the world continues to increase drastically, it puts a strain on the agriculture of the rural areas. So now a lot of urban areas, it's very important for them to start thinking of innovative ways to incorporate, you know, agriculture in cities, in these dense environments. A lot of cities are also going from the threshold of, you know, 5 to 10 million to 10 to 15 to 20 million people. Just in Africa alone, for example, right now, Lagos, Cairo, and Johannesburg, I believe, are the largest cities. But by 2070, Kinshasa in the Democratic Republic of Congo will actually be the largest city in Africa. The means to support the explosion of population in the urban areas is putting a strain on governments. And it's time for global authorities to come together and try to understand the issues that we're going to face. The pandemic is just, you know, it's a wake-up call to global governments, understanding that it's very, very critical that we start planning our cities better. Concrete. Yes, it's great to put up a building to house the growing population in a city like Toronto, but it has effects. It has effects to our atmosphere. It has effects to our quality of life. Urban planning, in a nutshell, it's more of a psychology. You take the geography and the understanding of how the intricacy of road networks, transit-oriented developments, which are, you know, for example, Scarborough, Mississauga, these are satellite cities that are growing. They're dense commercial and dense residential, and they're connected to each other with transport nodes such as train, such as the highway, and mobility is becoming more and more of an issue in these large cities. So urban planning is a very, very large discipline, and you can get specific into, you know, mobility. You can get specific into sustainable design. Now if you guys heard, there's something called LEED, certified buildings. So essentially, you know, the goal of urban planners is try to create a better living standard for the people that live not just in the cities, but around it as well. And that's kind of the reason why I was so attracted to the subject itself, because of the psychological aspect it has. As Muslims, it's very important for us to take care of our neighbors. How can we, take that to a broader scale? How can we influence, a better and stronger community fabric? It starts with communication and dialogue. Technology now can help us take that even further. I've met with cities in the past that they're like, Reza, this is our Vision 2040. And it's like a 200-page document. However, the tree lines, the density that they're showing, the transit nodes, if anything changes in that master plan, what happens to that book? It becomes irrelevant. So they just wasted a lot of trees putting that together. What technology enables us to do is reduce carbon emissions for cities, reduce carbon emissions for planners, for foreign direct investment agencies. We can essentially build entire city applications digitally now. These are called digital twins. These digital twins are very interesting because architects and developers use them to sell an idea to the city. The cities, when they realize that, you know, they don't have to have 6 meetings with this developer. The developer comes in with a screen now and they're like 15 stories, click, 10 stories, click. So you can see the actual shadows of the building and the impact it will have to the environment where the building is going to be erected. So now cities, you know, they have the ability to understand that the way we develop the future of our environment, we have to use technology. And then you can use the same technology for sales and marketing, for promotion, for showing how a building is green. And at the end of the day, something that's growing and is becoming more important is the building management. So a lot of the tools today that our sisters are very familiar with is called BIM, for example. And you can see a building application and from AutoCAD or from BIM or Revit and see, you know, the structure of the building. But to connect the IoT systems, for example, all of the doors, all of the security cameras, all of the water, the heating of a building, they already started, smart buildings are incorporating that. What we're doing is we're creating a digital twin of the building so that it's easier to understand and to control those systems. So we're partnering with Rogers for smart building applications now. So I feel that this technology, it's a way for smarter planning, for smarter urban planning, but smarter planning as a whole, because we need to be very mindful of our environment. We don't have a long time on this planet, and the time that we do have, we have to try to prolong its life as much as possible. That's a duty of every human being, and especially for Muslims. So I'm going to show you guys a little bit of some of the stuff that we do. I'm very impressed with what our sisters shared. So my files are a little heavy, so I'm going to, because of Zoom, there might be a little bit of a lag. But what you see here is Washington, D.C., for example. We built this in 3 weeks. It's a complete digital twin of 7.8 kilometers of Washington, D.C. And our client is a commercial real estate corporation based here in Canada. And they needed a smart green way to show their clients why it's important to rent and lease this specific building. A, it has direct views to the Capitol building and is in close proximity to the White House. And B, it's also a very sustainable building. We're going to go inside now. You can see the lobby. So we recreated an existing building. Usually what we do here at 3D Cityscapes is we showcase future developments, future cities, future buildings. But this is an example of an existing building at a time where people cannot physically travel to Washington, D.C. as much as they could before. Now our clients can actually take the building projects to their clients digitally. So like this, we can show, you know, what a building would look like inside if it was medical offices, law offices. You could show the roof. You can show that, you know, it can be used in different seasons. We can show what's 5-minute walking distance, 10-minute walking distance, 20-minute walking distance from a specific area or a specific building. We can incorporate the train schedules, the bus schedules. It essentially helps people plan their lives around an area before they actually move there. So this was all created using the engine, which is called Unreal Engine. This is what we use. A lot of movies use it. Now automobiles are using it, like the Ford Bronco. And also we, sorry, I'm gonna show you the next one. And also Unreal Engine is also was used for Fortnite, which is the largest selling game in the world. So we just use it for actual serious applications. Why do universities and colleges love, you know, when we contact them and get interns from there, is because rather than them working, you know, doing an internship at Ubisoft or at another gaming company, they actually can work with the cities and the municipalities that they live in and create a positive change. So we can create anything. Like, for example, here, you're going to see we can show how downtown Mississauga is connected to downtown Toronto with the GO train. So here's an example of that. And I apologize for the lag, it's because we're on Zoom.
No worries. We could still see it well.
Okay, I was making sure it's not 4K, but essentially over here, you could see that we've recreated Union Station and then how you can connect to a different transit-oriented development within the city of Toronto, how you get to Mississauga. And I'm just going to forward because of the skipping. So Mississauga is going through a huge development right now, 52-acre project that we're working on. And then we can show data like how many people live within 10 square kilometers, 20 square kilometers. So the thing is about Google Earth, you're seeing the past. With 3D Cityscapes technology, you're seeing the past, present, and the future.
How are you seeing the future? Is it that, you know, you guys build potential, like what's going to, or you guys kind of create the virtual image of what's going to be built once it's built?
Exactly. So we usually use architectural files or AutoCAD files, 3ds Max files, whatever the client provides us, we can recreate that building.
Right.
For other buildings that you see in the area around this, what we usually use is, as you can see our avatar here. So essentially we usually, now with drones, you know, with aircrafts, we're able to scan entire areas. So we have an artificial intelligence division within the company. We're working on something called NERF, Neural Radiance Field Technology. And that's helping us texturize the photogrammetry of cities with better quality, and we're able to do it faster. So essentially, we're the first company in the world that's building entire cities on the cloud. So all of Toronto is going to be accessible on the cloud. What that means is reducing the barrier to entry. So if you're living in another part of the world, if you want to experience another city or the future of your own city, you can actually do that. 6 years ago, the city of Singapore paid $73 million to a company to design virtual Singapore. The quality of it and the use of it was very limited, but the purpose was very powerful. They used it to understand the heat maps and the heat studies. So when they're building these towers and these buildings, how will it affect transportation? How will it affect the temperature on the ground for the people that live there? So cities are starting to use you know, digital twins and this technology a lot more so that they can plan and mitigate future disasters. We're also working with the Toronto Police Services because having a live interactive map of the city of Toronto can help with emergency response as well. Here's a quick example, and I apologize, it's not the whole mosque. We're not allowed showing it right now because there's going to be a specific event, inshallah, to launch this project. But just to give you a taste that this is a good way that you can, when you create a company, you can also give back to your community. You know, the mosque contacted us. They said, please, you know, if there's a way that you can show the future of the interior, the exterior, we're like, absolutely. So this is just a teaser of that mosque project. And you guys can find this online if you Google Council of Islamic Guidance. And inshallah, I believe in Ramzan, they're going to have a program where you can walk inside the mosque. You can donate in different areas of the mosque. You can see the basketball court. You can see the Zari room. You can see the prayer area, all of that. So this is just a teaser. I don't want to show you the inside. Inshallah, you're going to have to tune in for that for Council of Islamic Guidance when they do the unveiling. But it just goes to show that once you get into this world of technology and architecture, there's a lot of applications that you can use this for and give back to our community, because that's what's important. Use these tools to build a stronger foundation and inspire the next generation, because everybody has their own way of giving back. And hopefully this is a small way that we can give back as well.
Thank you so much for sharing that and for that excellent reminder, you know, of connecting our field to our faith at the end of the day. Inshallah, we'll talk a little bit about that. in a sec. But I'm conscious of time, so I'll move it over to Brother Ali Basit so that we can move on to the next section, inshallah.
Guys, I'm so impressed with all of this. Seeing your actual work, you get to see. I mean, Zainab, I would say stay away from Corona, but that's the only thing. Otherwise, I'm so impressed by all your work. And Brother Raza, I didn't know you use Unreal. I use that too, but only to play, not to make.
We'll graduate you into this now.
We'll gradually go towards that side. Aliya, inshallah, we'll have to get you to Iraq soon so you can start planning out the shrines. Aliya, let's continue with you. What would you say have been your biggest challenges in the work that you do, and what are some of the aspects of the work that brought you the most happiness? I know your the love and hate relationship with the professor doesn't count anymore, so it has to be something new.
I think that's what it is, though. It's the struggle that we go through that makes us love our work even more. Because if we're not constantly trying to improve ourselves and going through these hurdles, then we can't grow an appreciation for these things. A lot of my work, actually, like the ideas that I come with, and Huda had mentioned this earlier, is my interest in technology and the human spirit, and how that plays a role in space. And a lot of the time you can't physically design that, right? Like you can take a land such as, Bain al-Haramain, and you can talk about that in that spiritual aspect by bringing in ahadith. When you bring it into a secular society, that it goes over their heads. I just review, and a lot of them were just like, I don't know this part of the world, because, for me, Muslims are just what I see on TV. And that's one of the challenges, is that you really have to break it down very simply to a lot of the audiences here that we have in Canada. And so my curatorial aspect actually plays a bigger role in those kinds of delivering those kinds of abstract ideas. And one of the exhibitions that I did a few years ago, it was called Infinity of Intimate Space. It brought on the ideas of a phenomenologist, or an author whose name is Gaston Bachelard. And he was talking about how, say, the room that I'm in, it can become an infinite space when I start to dream in it. And he also talked about, like when we talk about doors, just the little aspects of our rooms, like the door. Refugees were asked, or children who are refugees were asked to draw a door, they didn't draw a doorknob in that door, because to them, doors weren't an escape. Sorry, I'm like crying. Doors weren't an escape. And if you look in through, if you open up your drawer, your sock drawer, there's a whole world inside the sock drawer. It's not just socks. And it's just the reveries, the dreams that we have in those spaces that makes, a house a home. I went into an abandoned home one day and to film it, because a lot of my curatorial work is also linked to my art work as well. And a house that was destroyed and in shambles. People were doing drugs in it, clearly, but you can tell that the walls were still there because the memories were still intact. So memories can make architecture as well. That can't be designed. So that's why you need art to explain those manifestations that design can't. And so they work hand in hand.
Yeah, so I think the only time I'm that creative or motivated is when I'm sleeping, because I'm dreaming about all of these things.
Honestly, yeah, it is when you're sleeping. You make a whole world when you're sleeping. You do
Right.
ziyara, right? When you do ziyara and you're in your bed, I remember just think about it. Just think, transport yourself, make your room the land of ziyara, and just do your ziyara, and you're there, right? You are making your room an infinite space.
Inshallah. And maybe we can use some Unreal Engine to visualize that. Brother Raza, it's been about 2 years since 3D, you founded 3D Cityscapes. 3D Cityscapes. So far, what have been the biggest challenges for you from both an urban planning and business perspective? And what has been the most enjoyable aspect of this for you?
Yeah, excellent question. Challenges, there's too many. but challenges are also opportunities. You learn as you go. Don't be afraid. I would highly recommend that if there's someone out there, the youth especially, like if you have ideas, especially that can be, they can be transformative for a industry or for multiple industries. This is the time, especially in your 20s, to be very uncomfortable, to network, get to know as many people as possible, learn from them, learn from their mistakes, learn from your own mistakes. When I was building this company, I had no idea where it'll end up. I still don't know where it'll end up. Everything's changing every day, but alhamdulillah, I have my mom's prayers, which are very important. Obviously, both parents' prayers are very important. And but what you really need to focus on is make strength-based decisions rather than fear-based decisions. And that's very important because a lot of the times, we know that there's a lot of complex issues happening in our world right now and to society in general, but we already knew that this was going to happen. Imam Ali said that this world will disappoint you, right? So if we know that there's a certain direction that the world is going in, then we have to be the light in this world. And it's light within your home and it's light outside of your home as well. I would highly recommend that when you are starting a company or a startup like we did, there's a lot of challenges, but it's very important to surround yourself with people that can guide you. Sometimes people don't give you a chance. I always say this, and you have to create your own chance. And that's a beautiful thing because in this country, we have the opportunity to do that. Alhamdulillah, our families made a very difficult decision. They left their comfort zone. They came here, and it's what we do with this opportunity that will really make a difference 100 years from now, especially. So I think that surround yourself by a very good lawyer team. Important when you're starting a business, but be kind, be humble, treat your employees the way you want to be treated, with respect, with humility. And remember that actions speak louder than words. When you say something as a leader, it's more important to show it. If you're cleaning the garbage in your own office, people see that. And it's important because it's your workspace. You want it to be clean, right? But I had someone tell me, they're like, I can't believe you do that. I told them, I don't know anybody that shouldn't be doing that. We spend more time here than our home. We have to keep it clean. So clean environment is important. Clean thoughts are important, and just follow your heart. There's no better time than now to start building what you want to see, the change you want to see in this world.
Yeah, in addition to that, I would say host your own careers panel, because each time I talk with you guys, the more I talk with you guys, the more motivated I get, the more I want to do things.
100%.
100%.
Amazing.
So, Sister Zainab, as a master's student doing research in physical geography, what have you found to be the most challenging aspects of geography research or geographic research? And what have you found to be the most enjoyable parts of it?
So in terms of challenges, there are a lot of tools to learn. They're good opportunities, but there's lots to learn. There's lots of knowledge to gain. So this could take some time to develop, though an undergraduate degree usually allows you to develop at least the basis for these things. But you're constantly using new things, and new developments in the real world also affect and influence geographers' work deeply. Also, if you go this path, don't feel overwhelmed at what the potential for future specialization is. You will find your interests soon enough, and there are lots of career paths that will need your expertise. In geography, I'd say in general, there are two large issues when doing research, and other fields might share some of these as well. The first is having independence of thought. So when we see data and we read information and certain research articles, it's easy to be persuaded by what they're saying if we're not paying attention and using our own knowledge to criticize certain things. This is very important, but can easily be overlooked. Geography is a field that has dealt and continues to deal with colonization and biased information, and choosing to present certain views or articles or giving a louder voice or stronger presence to scholars or certain schools of thought, as well over and underrepresentation. It used to be a heavily male-dominated field and still dominated by males, though it's getting better. So learning to be a critical thinker amidst all the voices and the viewpoints in an interdisciplinary field like geography, you know, how to critically analyze what you're being told, and you yourself ensuring that you're undertaking analyses and producing accurate results and expressing the uncertainties of your research is very important. Because just like the media can skew the thoughts of people about the world, so can geographic outputs. There's a whole book called How to Lie with Maps. And this is not to tell us how to go about doing that, but to open our eyes to monitor our perception of things and to keep in mind that, especially in a field like geography, the way we decide to represent information visually, and yes, there are many ways to do so for a single data set, these can impact the conclusions we draw and have serious impacts. And my second point for the challenges is with regards to representation. So being aware that, so this is related. So being aware that our representation of things impacts the viewers down the road and what conclusions we pull out of these things, you know, through our maps, our statistics, and so on. In terms of joys, there are lots of joys in geography, both personal and general, or communal and far-reaching joys of doing geography. Personally, geography opens our eyes to the wonders of the world. There's an ayah in the Quran that says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, لَخَلْقُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ أَكْبَرُ مِنْ خَلْقِ النَّاسِ وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. So this is saying the creation of the heavens and the earth is certainly greater than the creation of humankind, but most people do not know. And I have to say that my geology classes really took me away. Like, geology is about rocks and the internal structure of the earth. But the information there that I learned really took me away because it just showed, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's magnificence and just how great he is and how small we are and how amazing all the natural wonders are. And I would come to class every day, even if I was tired, you know, excited to hear and learn more. And I felt a sense of joy and pride, not arrogant, but just compared to all those who didn't know Allah and that these are his creations and they are a subtle manifestation of his greatness. So the study of geology and geography allow us to recognize the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestows upon us. So on a personal level, learning these things to understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his greatest creations better and being able to explain things around you, right? So being aware of your environment, how the past shaped how things are now. And on a community or global level, geography has really far-reaching positive impact. So I already spoke about some of the ways in which geography can help solve some of the greatest problems of today, but to reiterate a little bit, what we learn and experiment with in our undergraduate classes builds the foundation for geographers to gain the necessary knowledge and tools in order to be able to understand the problems of yesterday and today and address the problems of today and tomorrow. And what I like about geography is it's really valuable in solving society and communities' needs. You know, that's what drives it. And this is also what drives and helps societies grow. So creating better living spaces for people is one of the greatest ones for me, you know, eliminating the injustice that's ingrained in our societies and cities to make way for a better life in them, you know, making people aware of the environment around them and how to protect it. Making people aware of their geographic locations, their lands, giving them the tools to be able to monitor these, protect them, and benefit from them, and so much more.
Right. So just quick question. How do you lie with maps?
It's the way that you decide to represent quantities within limited spatial areas. If you use different statistics to represent these things, you can make certain patterns more obvious than others. And there are different ways to represent data sets. Yeah. Okay,
so it won't count when you use it. Let's go to Sister Huda to discover some of the how Islam acts as a motivator for your career paths.
Thank you so much. You know, this may be sort of a career-based event, and this is a geography and urban planning based event, but honestly, the amount of spiritual energy that we get from talking to the panelists, and how they don't just see their career as the siloed sort of part of their life, but they see it connected to every part of their being. Just, it really shows through. And I mean, we're going to be talking about, the spiritual aspect in a second, but you guys have already brought that in. And just like Brother Ali, I feel so motivated from a professional perspective, but also from a spiritual perspective. So thank you for bringing that in throughout the session. So let's continue maybe with Zainab and get your perspective. I think you already highlighted, but if there's anything else about that connection between Islam and geography, and what that connection looks like for you.
Yeah, so to begin, we must always find a way to connect things to Islam rather than figuring out how what we're doing fits into Islam. And it's a great question. And I'm glad you asked it, because often people put their interests before God or their religion when choosing a career in which to enter. But, this limits the ways and the extent in which you can actually serve your religion and community. And there is a big emphasis on following your interests when choosing a career. And that is very important. That will help you find your way if you're lost. And if this helps, it's not about finding your purpose. It's about finding Allah's purpose for you, right? Your career, your job, your education is a means by which to reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so along with your interests, think of what goal you want to achieve within your community or within society. What do you want to help change? What do you want to help fix, right? And how do your interests and strengths set you up to address these issues? So this is how you will make the biggest impact and be most fruitful in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have to be prepared to always do something you don't like, even in your own field or career. That's why you must always have a drive and a motive and a reason for why you're doing what you're doing. That will keep you going when all else fails. And geography is great in many ways. And I think I've made this clear already. Many great people have read a lot and have been involved in geography and in geographical societies. An instance of this, the late Alex Trebek was part of a geographical society. It's just one example. And if you're thinking about geography, I'm sure you can find something within it to suit your interests and goals. It's really a great field to enter. So for me, the connection with geography and Islam I've spoken about, you can see it's very closely related to my joys of being part of it. Understanding the world, being able to explain things to others, and practical things at that, and helping the communities that need it most through the tools we learn and the knowledge we gain. Geography allows you to, expand your thinking, your viewpoint of the world. It creates well-rounded people who can think critically and address our problems. And inshallah, we can achieve that. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for his help always.
Inshallah, that is definitely the key to success, inshallah. Aliya, how about you? How does Islam inform your work and, your life as a student and professionally?
Actually, when I was a child and I was like, I want to be an architect when I grow up, what drove me actually was this desire to rebuild Jannat al-Baqi. This passion that you have, this love that you have for the Aimma, and, being able, and, just seeing the kind of destruction, the disrespect that we have on our masters. But in order to do that, we would need the permission of the Imam of our time. And you can't get the permission of our Imam of our time if we haven't rebuilt Jannat al-Baqi in our hearts yet. And so since I was a kid, it was always about that. It was, how do we create a space? How do we, not just create a space, how do we transform our heart into a space which loves the Imam and the other incredible people who are buried in Jannat al-Baqi? How do we make our hearts that space that loves them and respects them? And it drove me to actually to choosing specific sites to work on and to look into. But as Sister Zainab said, it's like it's not really about how our interests. It's not really our interests first. It's about how can we serve God. And just like in any career fields, it's always first about serving God. And how do you do that, right? It's internalizing those things, internalizing what's important to the job that you're doing. How do we make our hearts a haven for loving God and serving Him? And if that manifests as we're actually rebuilding Baqi Jannat al-Baqi, actually, redesigning Wadi al-Salam, then that's a bonus. But at the end of the day, if our imam smiles at us or even just looks at our direction, I think we're solid.
For sure. And, I think regardless of whatever field, you can always find that connection to, how do we serve Ahl Bayt? How do we serve God in our community at the end of the day? And inshallah, we've tried to highlight that. But Brother Raza, for you, I think outside of, I was going to say outside of urban planning, it's hard for us to make that connection, but you've made that connection so easily so far. But, maybe expand more on, that connection that you find between urban planning and technology and your faith.
So essentially, like, the destination for all of us could be the same, but the way we get there is very different. I think that everything, especially for me, it starts with intention. Like when I did the walk from Najaf to Karbala, my aunt, my dad's sister, she's buried in Wadi al-Salam. So I walked by her grave, I did my Fatiha, and I continued to walk. And I see opportunities. Like I know that there was medics there, there's doctors there. My friend would go there, with the Smile Foundation to help kids with their, with their teeth. What can we do, right? And you can follow your interest. Your interest is part of the whole process as well of getting back to that destination. You want to be with the Imam. You want to be in Jannah, right? So understanding that it's okay to, if let's say your parents expect something, doctor, engineer, or something, the greatest gift we can give our parents is to be honest to ourselves and to be honest with them and expand our horizons. Understand that there's so much more happening in this day and age than the old professions that we had to get into. Here in Canada, we have the ability to help not just our own communities, but we can help the Indigenous communities. We can help people that are marginalized in society. And whatever career path you choose, it should be able to benefit, especially the people that are being oppressed. And oppression has occurred since the beginning of mankind, and it will happen until the end. It's what we can do to benefit and make that oppression less during our lifetime. So I believe that urban planning, for me, it's, I was lucky enough to be in a time where, there's a big transformation going on with technology. The startup life is it's not easy. You have to survive with sometimes no salary. You have to have some savings. You have to have some courage. But most of all, you have to have belief in God, because there's a purpose you're here, and only you can help fulfill that. So trusting in the process is very important. Don't be afraid. Surround yourself by people who can guide you, who can motivate you. You don't want to be the smartest or the most religious in a room. You want to surround yourself by people that elevate you in your home and outside of your home. So even here, there's people that are Muslim and non-Muslim, but I feel elevated by all of them from a certain angle, right? Just like her teacher, she didn't like her teacher and now she loves her professor. Everyone has the ability to give out light. Allah chose us as a very special creation. And if we can recognize that with gratefulness, then we can build from there, inshallah.
Thank you for sharing that. And, just like what you said, serving the creation of God is serving God himself, and if we can create environments that make people's lives a lot better and more enjoyable, I think it's such a huge accomplishment, because space really does matter. But, I'm so sad that, that we are moving on to the last segment, which is the audience questions, but inshallah, we can give the audience a voice now, and I'll pass it over to Brother Ali to take care of that.
Yes, Brother Raza. I think you should consider being a motivational speaker as well. But there's a technical question, or not technical, but there's a question asking, what are some important technical skills needed to succeed in your field? So if someone wants to get in.
Sure, I guess I'll start. In this field, in tech and startup world, courage is the number one. After that, like there's so much opportunity right now. You see, like when I was designing buildings, it was about 5 years ago that I had this idea. I sent the AutoCAD drawings to the city of Edmonton, and I'm like, this is the project that you guys are asking for. Sometimes the answers to what we want to build or what we want to do are in the questions that people ask on a regular daily basis. They asked me, they said, how can we show these buildings in the context of the urban environment where they will be placed? And I realized that we're so limited with AutoCAD, you know, they can't understand these drawings. So I use this tool called SketchUp. SketchUp, you know, it's very cartoony, not very realistic, but alhamdulillah, it was enough for us to, you know, land that project. But that's when I realized that, you know what, there has to be a better way that we can show the urban environment in cities. And even if it's not created in the geographical space or by the architectural world, you know, there's technologies out there that you can bring in and help, you know, build the solutions of tomorrow. So another skill that you need is also understanding that if there's a solution in another industry, you can find ways to bring it and tweak it to serve a different industry. And the technical, like AutoCAD, Revit, 3ds Max, Unreal Engine, there's courses for this. I would highly recommend, especially our youth that are very interested in gaming, to find ways that, you know, can help, you know, design our cities better, that can help, you know, understand our environments better, and look for ways that are more fulfilling than just the enjoyment that a game has, which is very important as well in your youth.
He's telling me to stop my addiction.
Slowly.
Inshallah.
Before I give the next question to Zainab, I just wanted to say that, you know, you talked about before about, you know, how your technology allows for better planning, and you talked about it, you know, within a urban planning sort of perspective, but even from a consumer perspective, for myself, when I've went shopping for apartments or apartment hunting, there was a totally different experience when I see just the floor plan versus when I actually can move, like see a digital space and move it around and see what that apartment will look like. So I think it's like that technology is so fantastic. And I think if youth can really take advantage of that and start learning those technical skills, I think it can really take, you know, not just professionals, but also consumers a really long way in making their experience better.
100%.
Sorry,
yeah. I was just going to say that, yeah, you're absolutely right, because real estate itself is going through the biggest transformation right now. It was the slowest to adapt. And in landscape architecture and geography and urban planning, you know, prop tech is, you know, the decisions that we're making as consumers and the decisions that cities are making now, you know, for planning the cities, technology can offer a lot of, you know, information. So we're taking that data and you're able to visualize it now. So 100% agree with you.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Zainab, sticking with the concept of technology, how do you see technology changing and impacting the work of geographers? That's the question.
Yeah, it's good that there's a focus on technology, I guess, because, you know, honestly, it's the future, and it's a very important tool to have in your toolbox. It should be a main tool in your toolbox. People are pushing towards, you know, I guess having society is very dependent on technology, and it's increasing. And, you know, like the curriculums are changing to include coding within elementary school, right? So this society is definitely going towards a technological society, and technology it has a very strong presence in geography already. And it is a very important tool, and that is definitely something that you should be working on. It has already begun impacting the work of geographers, and many people and companies are stressing the need to work and, you know, increase your knowledge and experience with technologies. Technologies form the basis of almost anything that we do in geography now. So do work towards that. And yeah, I guess I had more to say, but I've forgotten it now. But I think the point has come across. I echo what has been said, that technology is very important and that it is a main thing that almost every field really is making use of. And if you can build that, then you will definitely have an advantage over others who haven't yet begun to focus on that. It's something that employers are really looking at very strongly. And it doesn't have to just be within classes. If you have time in the summer to take online classes that help you build a certain technological skill, do take the advantage of that, because that is something employers do look at, even if it's just, and if you volunteer your time yourself to learn something new, then that will show initiative to employers that you want to learn more and that, you know, you're trying to build these skills in those technologies.
That's a really, really excellent piece of advice for the youth out there. And I'll just say, you know, technology is so important, but it never replaces humans. It just makes, you know, our life easier as humans. So if you're really interested in technology, never forget that aspect.
As a tool, yeah.
Exactly. It's a tool. It's not a replacement of the real human connection. So I'll let Brother Arib also take it over from there.
Yeah, Sister Aliya, you mentioned, I think you kind of have answered this question, but they're asking, what drove you to choose to focus on Wadi Salam, and how do you explain your work's significance to a Western audience?
Since I gave, like half answered that question, I'll give you the embarrassing story this time. So I picked Wadi Salam over Jannatul Baqi because I knew the Saudi government wouldn't let me do any field work in Jannatul Baqi, and I knew the Najaf government would. That's the embarrassing part, why I chose Wadi Salam. But it was always between these two. When I actually gave my letter of intent to my application for landscape architecture, the first sentence that I wrote was basically, I learned what landscape architecture was about, because when I walked into Wadi Salam, there was history in the sand. And that sand is just extremely important, just, you know, walking on it. I was talking to Zainab before, and I'm like, I can't wait to talk about rocks. It truly is, like, when you look at a rock, the amount of history that's in it, the layers, it's not just geological history, it's also people. You know, the water that's really traveled through it to make that. So Wadi Salam is it's the largest active cemetery in the world. And no one knows that really, except when we bring it to a Western audience, we have to context they understand. And I'm trying to think of what I done, but my supervisor, I remember just my last review, my supervisor at the end of it was like, you know what? If we understand their landscapes, they have to make the effort to understand ours. And so just being confident that you speak the colonizer's language, but you present a different perspective. And that's how you get them to kind of understand what the box is. You bring them in the box, and then slowly they grasp a little bit here and there, but they have to make the effort to understand us. They can't just, you know, push us aside. And that's been the struggle to communicate. But it's really, just, you got to use the colonizer's vocabulary, just like in architecture. The architects in so many parts of the world that were colonized use modernist architecture to be like, hey, we're going to use your language, but we're going to, you know, use our bricks, our stone, our visual language.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've been to Wadi Salam, and it's not really graves, it's like bunkers. And in the bunkers, there's like a bunch of graves. So inshallah, it sounds very interesting. Sister Huda, do we have time to continue?
Did you have time to continue, or should we just wrap it up? I think we can wrap it up. We promised 4 o'clock, so we can wrap it up here.
Okay, inshallah, timely people. All right, guys. As Brother Raza said, he watched the panel yesterday. He knows this part of the panel is very undear to me because it's a part of separation, unfortunately. So Unfortunately, we are at the end of the panel, and this careers panel and passions panel series for the year of 2021, 2020 and 2021 is coming to an end. This is the very last episode, and we have some honorary guests to end off with. So thank you so much to our wonderful panelists for joining us today and sharing your valuable, invaluable experiences and knowledge. I hope you had as much fun as we did, and thank you for the audience as always for tuning in with us until this very last session. For those who have been with us since the very beginning, a special thanks to you. But before we let you all go, Captain Huda has a few words to say, so I'll pass the mic over to her. Inshallah, we'll get going from there.
Thank you so much. And again, from me, thank you all for taking this journey with us throughout the semester. And although you've only seen us for a few hours each month, throughout the last several months, there's been an amazing group of dedicated individuals working so hard to make this semester-long series a success. And we wanted to sort of bring them on in these last moments to so that you get a chance to see the hardworking hands behind this project. So I think they've been coming on. So if you want to turn your camera on, please go ahead. It's a good time to do that so that people can see you and we can recognize you for all your hard work. So we have with us, Aliya and Zainab were also part of the managing team. We have Iman, I'm just going in order. We have brother Zuhair, we have Reem, we have brother Mikael, I'm not sure if you guys can see him, and we have sister Sakina. And we want to thank all of them, but we also, there's a few people that couldn't make it here, such as Sani Zahra and Brother Ghalib, who's been our sort of official and unofficial Quran reciter, who's recited for us several times, and then a few other replacements, such as Brother Muhammad and Brother Zain. So welcome, guys. Thank you so much for joining us on the live. And just to say a few words to end this series off, Brother Zuhair and I had this vision when we started at the beginning of the year. We're part of University of Toronto St. George, just to bring you guys some context. And we wanted to bring a career-focused event to students and the youth population, but also, a little bit more of the community and parents, because I think that it's really important for them to be able to hear these different perspectives. But we wanted to show the youth, and we wanted them to hear and see from professionals and role models that they can look up to and learn from. And we're so grateful to have been able to fill our panels with these inspiring individuals. But such a big project couldn't, there's just so many little pieces, and we couldn't have done it without the collaboration with TMAs from other universities. So that includes University of Toronto Scarborough and Queen's University. And there's so many talented individuals on in both groups and in our group as well from St. George that, for me, I think have not only made organizing and implementing this project so much smoother, but you guys have made it so much fun along the way. So thank you guys for everything that you've done throughout the semester, from helping to find and contact panelists, to the social media marketing, the learning and troubleshooting of new technology, which was, such a crazy feat this year, but necessary nonetheless, for managing the honorariums, moderating, editing videos, hosting, reciting Quran. And I think really having that ambition and that desire to make this event been very beneficial for our community. And I think most of all, thank you for leaving hundreds of messages in the WhatsApp group after every panel of relevant and irrelevant content. It's always fun to read those after the panel. I think you guys have really shown to me that when you have a team of with people with such pure intention and amazing work ethic, big things are possible. And at the end of the day, anything I think that we have accomplished, it goes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's all thanks to him that we were able to do any of this and the tawfiq that he gave us. So alhamdulillah, for his mercy, his blessings, his tawfiq, today and every day. And inshallah, our efforts are did. And I wish I could throw you guys a, year-end pizza party, but this pandemic has sort of blocked a lot of things from happening. But I think also if this pandemic didn't happen, I don't know if this collaboration would have happened. So there's always, that bright side to everything. So thank you all again for being here, and I'll open the floor if any of you guys want to say anything.
Huda, I think you forgot someone to thank.
I'm so sorry. Let me check my list. There's so many people, but do you know who I forgot?
Yeah, I think you forgot yourself. So I think you're actually the person who needs to be thanked.
I'm like looking at my list.
I think you're actually the person who needs to be thanked. So, ever since the panel started, there was no doubt in our minds that it would run as smoothly as they did. You brought on amazing panelists who enlightened and inspired us, despite their career paths being different than our future aspirations. So these panels really allowed us to connect with the greater Muslim community all over Canada and the world. And we also got to take a look at the amazing work done by our brothers and sisters and see the wonderful impact they had on this world. So through the series, you have demonstrated what a real leader looks like by pouring your literal heart and soul and time into the event. And your communication and organization skills are unparalleled, and we truly could not have done this without you. I think I can speak on behalf of the whole team when I say thank you for truly leading the team and for all your efforts and support that you have given us. So to conclude, despite the amount of work that it took to run these panels, I can definitely say that it paid off, and may God reward you for all your hard work. And personally, I would also like to say thank you to the rest of the wonderful team behind this event. So Aliya, Zainab, Iman, Mikael, Ali, Muhammad, Zuhair, Sani, and Sakina, thank you. I never thought in a million years that God would bring us together, and for that I am forever grateful to have met such amazing and hardworking, passionate individuals. So thank you.
Thank you guys so much for that. You guys are so sneaky. I was like so confused and so worried. I'm like, who did I miss? I feel so bad. But thank you guys so much. Honestly, this really, it was a team effort. There's no way this could have been done. And you guys are such an amazing team. So thank you for that. And Brother Raza, we kept you a little bit longer, but thank you so much for being with us today and for sharing your incredible experiences.
Oh man, my pleasure. You guys are amazing. You guys are an inspiration to me, and keep up the good work, and inshallah, keep passing the torch down.
Thank you so much for your kind words. And if there's nothing else, we can wrap it up, and inshallah, maybe we'll see you next year.
Maybe one more thing. We at UTSC we had a similar idea, but we never imagined it to be like this, or this big. So Huda, huge thank you to you guys. Queen's University, shout out. 3D Landscapes, you're part of the group now, so thank you for being here, Raza.